Welcome to Haven Community Conversations, where we talk about faith, life, and everything in between. And we're doing part two of my conversation with my pastor friends. I want to start off by introducing them, and then we'll pray together and we'll get started. First, we got Krejchi Hester. He's the pastor of St. Paul Community Church. So, what's that? Yes. Trying not to say, man. Yes. Community church. Community church. We got Darren Moore, who's pastor of True Missionary Baptist Church. Got it right? Right? Yep. And then we got our co-host today, or he's actually hosting. I'm just going to pass the ball to him there in a second. We got Jess Larson, who is the pastor of Sojourn. Is there a second title of the Sojourn?
Yeah, just Sojourn Baptist.
Just Sojourn Baptist Church. All right. Well, this is unfair. We're supposed to have variety. You get two Baptist churches here today. I should have felt better when I was inviting you guys. Sorry, Preachy. Well, we got two community churches now too, because you switched over. You're no longer Methodist, so we got two community churches versus two Baptist churches. Let the games
Be online.
begin. And let's pray, guys, before I pass it on to Jess. Actually, Jess, why don't you go ahead and open this?
Yeah, love to. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for tonight. And we had so much fun last time we got together for this. It is great to be able to get back together again and be able to share a little bit of our lives with one another and be encouraged by his fellow brothers in the ministry. And Lord, I pray you'd help us to speak truth and love one another. And if you would be so pleased as to use even the words that we share with each other to encourage others, we pray you would, and that you be glorified and honored for this time together. Pray in Jesus' name.
That's what you.
That'd be cool. Well, Scott, I feel like I can't do you service because you do this so well. So I'm just learning from the Padawan.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, thank you for letting us welcome again together, and we'll talk and show. I know one of the questions there was a couple things we talked about last time that we just didn't get to kind of like completely maybe flush all the way out. And one of those things that came up was being in small churches. I'm sure that between the four of us, we've been through some hard things. And I was wondering who wants to start us with this question, but if you share something that you feel like you can share about maybe something hard, if you need to keep it general, you can. That's something hard to happen within ministry or within church life, and how the Lord provided for you through that time, maybe what you learned through it. So kind of this is like maybe a battle scar, some sort of difficulty or hardship that you kind of walked through, and what did you went through it? Who wants to get us started?
I don't think I had it was traumatic experiences related to anything in the church or you had a difficult goal or things that were in congregation. I've been spared most of them. I think the thing has probably been the bias because it was in ministry. We went through the season extended. Felt like we were having a fear every month for my 18 years. Yeah. And look, the thing is that you still have to show up the way you need to show up while that's happening, and these other things that happen. And what I learned from that was I had a real good sense of where my limits were, and I also learned about the capacity of congregation. So I had to learn on this. There's only so much you could do. That I had an unrealistic expectation on myself, but I had unrealistic expectations that the congregation couldn't do. And it wasn't so much that I led them through it or they carried me. We all just journeyed into the grief and honored the grief together. And I think that there were some very definite things. There's a line, demarcation in the church to where whatever we are now, we became that after that says. We definitely were. We were different together. I thought we understood each other better. I think we showed each other more grace. I think that's a new Calvinism about grief. And I think that if you understood the more than anything, that lament has a real place in the life of the church. You just can't praise your for your dad. All the songs on you agree. And that's okay. I think that we made it safe for people to not be okay. And I'm eternally thankful for that. So now we have people that show up, however they show up, knowing that it's not an exception, but it's normal. You know, it's a light, and whatever we do on that Sunday is going to speak to that. So you're not off of on schedule. You're just waiting more, and we will reach with.
Did that affect the songs that you guys sang together during that time, or was it just more how you guys talk with one another? Like, I always find it hard to, where do you fit like laments into worship on a Sunday morning?
I think the Black church context has always had years about that. That wasn't necessarily hard for us. I would say it kind of to reach back some, because we've sanitized worship to a point to where we expect people to come to church and we keep them here because even if they can say something about us. And then sometimes even with the way we preach, there's no resolution. Is what it is. And I think that we had to learn to be okay that this is where it is. So these are real lifers. And then when you do the math in the sermons, lament plays a disproportionate role in Psalms compared to what we have here. So when we thought about our preaching calendar and everything else, we just got a lot of another attention. You know, you do a song, so we're not celebrating. It is okay. We're not gonna force it out of the set. We're not gonna make it. Okay. Like we go to, I would go to funerals, and I know it's quite bossy people when I say this, but you know, I would often hear people say things like, families walk in, and somebody stands up and says, "This is a celebration of life," and you've taken away people's opportunity to mourn their deaths. And I'm thinking, you can celebrate, but why is mourning bad?
Yeah. Almost every funeral I preach now, I talk about grief and their grief. I remind everybody that it's okay to grieve, because there is that false notion, not with everybody, but there's a lot of people in the church that they have this misunderstanding that they got to be just full of joy on funeral day because we're celebrating the life. And it's like, hey, they're not here anymore. They're with the Lord. We praise that, but they're not with us anymore. And grief is okay. It's a gift from God. So yeah, I agree with that.
That's another detail. So, question.
I've had a season similar to Darren's. It was year 7 for me. I mean, if I had a pastor and I had never had from. I had 7 church mothers down for something. 7 church mothers down for something. And that was very, very different.
To cover what church mother is,
Church mother for me, they is senior citizen age, but they're ladies, men who are stability force in the church. And they offer wisdom, they offer counsel, they offer sense of stability, where you lean on them for just guidance, and they help the tone and the tenor of the church. It kind of help others, especially the younger people. They kind of just know they have a real awareness of the church, a real sense and feel of the church, kind of just know kind of the expectation, how church should be. And it does offer that atmosphere or mentality. And I'm doing a good job explaining it. So for me, I have some churches I have like 4 or 5 church nights in the life of the church. But I lost 7 of them in that season. Willows. Not having any finish. I mean, 7 years of passion, no free year, back to back to back every year. very hard. But another interest, Darren that's around it. So what we had, I think one for me that I would look up that was really difficult at my first church now. Or his first 3 years of ministry in high school, I was literally at pastoring the church that my family I bumped in. My family was forced that you could to go with me because my family's and the church that we have left, St. Paul, and that's with my pastor, 11 years. Just were they were from my wife's family church. My kids grew up there. Church went from 100 people to 300 people a year from the country. It's just really, really exciting. You did that you get to church with 12 senior citizens and stacking their ways, enough few kids, and it was a real struggle. Every Sunday. Then I would tell something, y'all just go Sun cars, go Sun cars. But trying our whiting to be supportive of making sure more understanding the responsibility. Like he didn't only just call me, he called her Israel and gives them the grace as pastors' wives. Is any grace to be due to serve in ministry. So, but that was some difficult days trying to navigate that. And another one I would bring, I probably should say this, is serving along people when you love, but you start not to like. You start not to like, and you serve you with them. But you leave, it can really grow, really test. You have to be wise of the certain, get something that they really have to think before you speak, look before you leave. Be very mindful how you respond. And for me, even facial expressions. Sometimes my face can tell it off. Yeah. And so be mindful of that. So those are 3 areas I can really highlight. They're really difficult creatures.
He's got.
Man, first several years of this church, and where wasn't there difficulties? First church where I got my ministry roots in after my wife and I got married. Was great little Baptist church, but we went through a church split there, and I was on volunteer staff there, so I was in the middle of all of that. So that was really hard. One thing I'm thankful for looking back, not that I would ever want to do it again. See, the things we're thankful for too, that's another thing, is like, we don't have to say, well, but we wouldn't change a thing. Because I think a lot of things that that I've learned from and grown from, I would still go and change it if I had the opportunity. You know what I mean? Especially my dark period of life when I wasn't following the Lord. I've learned a lot from that, but I wouldn't go back and do it all over again. I definitely wouldn't go through the church split if I had to do it all over again. But I learned a lot, I mean, that combined with I was going to seminary at the time and actually took a class on friction in the church and so that combined with what I went through was an early lesson for me, and then went on to pastor in another church, associate pastor, and me and other pastor who were tight. We were the best of friends. We learned that we had some differences, and man, that was quite the challenge. Our friendship survived, and we're friends. But looking back, we had some tough times, and it was hard to admit, especially when we parted ways. There was the temptation to just say, "Oh, it was just time," and it was part of it, But what made me realize it was time, but we were also, to call a spade a spade, we were having some issues that we needed to work through, and it took, cast my time at the church for us to work through it. I was visiting with a friend of mine. He had MS. He's passed away, God be with the Lord, but he was a former pastor. And he was asking me about my experience at that church, and for some reason, I just, I never lied about it, but I just, you kind of avoid things. You carefully choose what to say, and a lot of times we do that wisely. But I just felt like I should be honest with them. I was like, I can't lie to you. We were having issues, with each other, and disagreements and stuff. And he just kind of shrugged. And at that point, I thought that was interesting. And he says, Paul and Barnabas. And just those three words, I guess, Paul and Barnabas, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And I realized in the moment, I was like, hey, God uses that too. You know what I mean? He works all things out for good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And he took something that was messy, and he used it, and so I'm thankful for that as well. But man, and then transitioning in this church, I think I might have said in the last podcast, I can't remember, but I think I did everything wrong in the book. And God showed grace, and God has been with our church, and amen, we've been a church for 14 years. So, but it took several years to really, to really get going. And I've said before, is I don't know if it was faithfulness before. I'd like to brag and say it was faithfulness, or if it was fear of failure, because I see that in me as well. But either way, God was behind it, whether it was my fear or my faithfulness, But yeah, we almost didn't get off the ground in the first year. We went from the home to a school, and then back to a home, because there was some friction, with people in the church, and some people left, and we were already a small group. And so we went back to the home, and then we started meeting in a burger joint, and we met there for several months, had a trailer and everything, and things were going good. I got sick and I was in the hospital. Right when I get out of the hospital, I find out that we're not allowed to be there anymore, overnight, and then prayed a Mayday prayer, because literally we didn't have anywhere to meet the next day. I was kind of in panic prayer mode, and that's when God brought us to Old Town Spring. I've been here for 12 years, and I didn't want to come here, because there was issues with Old Town Spring and stuff like that. And God, every step of the way, he worked it out. I always felt like, and I know this isn't true, because as I see what God's doing, I have a clearer picture now, but every step of the way, it's gosh, see all these blessings. The grass is greener on the other side. I see all these blessings happen with these other pastors and churches. Why not us? I'm just whining, but God was good, and he was faithful. And so, like I said, here we are 14 years later. I feel like there's one more that I wanted to mention just real briefly. Yeah, so that was an answered prayer, getting this space, because it came to us overnight. So literally overnight, we got this space and had service. From that week, I found out that I lost that church, our space. And that next Sunday, we brought bring your own chair Sunday, but because we were using the restaurants, chairs. And before that, we were in the school, we've been in the home and stuff, so we didn't have chairs yet. So we brought bring your own lawn chairs to church Sunday, but it wasn't even built out yet. But we had church that next Sunday in Old Town Spring, in this building. And then one last one that I wanted to mention for us, just to give where God on this one is, there's been a couple times, but one really stands out that I journaled about. And we were down to our last $1,000. And I don't know, not that there's any wrong way to do it, but for me, I don't know what individuals give. And just because for me, and I just know a backing pastor, but it kind of just that type of personality or whatever, if I know what everybody gives. So anyways, we were down to our last $1,000, and I did know that a family left that were big, they were big contributors, and they were gone. And so, my wife had me write down prayer, and then we have this little thing that we stick it in up to you check it later or whatnot. And so I wrote down all my worst fears and as a prayer to God, and man, he immediately, like, every time we've gone that low, he just answers abundantly, and he's done that. He's done that a few times. But yeah, God has been good. There have been a lot of trials in our church, but yeah, God's been good, and I've learned a lot from this. Yeah. What about you, Luke?
Yeah, so maybe say a couple things quickly. Very first church I served at, out in the middle of nowhere. I kind of consider it my wilderness experience. I was out in Fosse, Texas, and literally in the middle of nowhere. And I think that there was a lot of grit and determination that was like kind of grown in me through that time. I was pretty lonely, was very much by myself, country church, and the senior pastor was very kind to me. But other than that, it was a pretty hard few months there. It was kind of my first experience of youth ministry and stuff. But learned some things through that. And then church I'm at now, church I came to at that point and been there ever since. There's probably the hardest things, I categorize in this way. Whenever families that being a small church, you know everybody pretty well. So whenever families leave, and it's not because they're moving to New York, when they're leaving and they're still living in the same area because they just don't want to be at the church anymore for one reason or another. Some of those are harder than others, so sometimes it's because there's some sort of irreconcilable difference that maybe you can't fix and it can't be changed. And maybe that's okay. Sometimes the hard ones are like when they tell you they're leaving and you had no clue they were about to. And we've walked together for years and years and years, and you're just like, I wish you had just told me 6 months ago you're feeling this way. And then you kind of do some introspection, right? Like, maybe I should have been reaching out more. Like, maybe that was my fault. And so there's a lot of that had been hard in those moments. So I think that category, hard. Big shifts in ministry have been hard. So we had a Christian school was part of our church, and a number of years ago we had to close it. And at that time, I had way too many hats. I was headmaster of the school, plus pastoring the church, plus teaching classes in the school, and it was way too much. I knew I couldn't go back to that. I had just got myself out of that job, and the principal that we had hired was now leaving, and so I couldn't go back to that. We didn't have the money for it. The enrollment was going down. And so, but I had my own kids in school. So there's just a whole lot that's wrapped into that equation. But it was a lot of tears, a lot of sadness, an acknowledgement through it that, the Lord's building his church. He's building his kingdom. And it's not built, ours is not the sum total of that. We are a local manifestation of God's work within the community, within the world. But still had to kind of process or work through that and that for that truth to kind of settle in. So I think major shifts in ministry where there's some sort of big thing. And the last thing I would say is, and this is by far the hardest, is leadership stuff. And I've had several very, very good friends that for one reason or another aren't talking to me now. And even served alongside of them, would have called them among my best friends, and those are hard. There's obviously I have wronged them in some ways, so I'm to blame for some of that. They bear their own guilt in it too. But even trying to reach out and trying to hey, could we just grab coffee, or could we, and getting kind of the cold shoulder still, those are just hard. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, I do believe that these guys are brothers in the Lord. So in heaven, it's going to be worked out. And I'm looking forward to that reunion, but it would be wonderful if that could be affected this side of heaven too. But it is just a reminder to me of just kind of how things can go. And I do think that those leadership moments are among the hardest, and because it then brings in the whole church too. So you kind of like, one of the things I want to ask you guys, this kind of like maybe segues into another question that we can talk about is, have any of your guys' either practice in ministry like pastorally or your theology? Something, I'm assuming not huge things have changed for any of you, but maybe something bigger, but have there been any changes that happen throughout your ministry that is that you're doing things differently than you would have done them, as a result of that, right? So like this could be practice, like pastoral work that you're doing, approach to things. It also could be just like theologically, like you've had a shift, and I would actually disagree with myself from 20 years ago on these things. I met myself. So you guys have any things like that?
So I like to tell people, I believe Moses walked around that bush a long time before he realized it was on fire. And in saying that, well, sometimes God will have us in the same space, continue to present to us the same tests until we can prove, till we can overcome it. And so I've noticed in non-ministry in mine that and Protestants say this. But I just said, you serve with people that don't like it. But I have a dynamic personality, but I'm not a controller person. I like to be involved. I don't like surprise. Don't like surprise. But I try not to micro. But at the same time, sometimes you'll find yourself working with people who kind of clash with your personality, try and clash with your vision, and I used to kind of run your mouth. I used to. I praise God I would do that, but I don't think okay. But at the same time, we have to learn how to navigate those gracefully, and give people space to be used, because they do edify me. They operate in areas and graces and gifts which I don't. And so that provides balance. That provides our ministry, and it provides just edification for the whole church in different areas. It placing in spaces which I'm not as gifted. I don't operate as competent. And so learning how to navigate those, and I believe we're in a season right now where I have another personality that God is and has brought to the ministry. I'm not gonna share this with you. It's just God had brought, and I'm having to really be the same, really be thoughtful in how I navigate this. In past, I think I would just watch it. Well, I did that. I did it before. I'm not standing for love for here. But that's really be the same how I navigate there. Because I see what the Lord is being. And I see the increase. I see by the invasion. And you walking around these streets, it's on fire. And the placement being good. And that word recognize, and you surrender and submit to what God is saying. You're not going to try and control it and smother it, and you end up in the same place, walking in the center. You start passing the same truth.
I guess it's mucky.
That'd be great, Scott.
Yeah. Well, man, I think the big thing I've talked about before, big shift with me was just embracing small church. And I think I've said before, I never wanted to be a mega church pastor. That was never, I've never been a part of a big church, even growing out. I think the insecurity is what I had. And one thing, I appreciate y'all. So just listening to y'all and your authenticity and your humility, I really appreciate you guys and let you share. But so yeah, I think not only embracing small church dynamic, but embracing who I am, at least in this season, where God's got me, and getting me to embrace that and walk forward in that. Yeah, man, as far as the theological question, just you get me in trouble. Like,
For you, the nitty gritty here. What's that? Super you to the nitty gritty, Scar.
oh man, no, I mean, there's a lot that stayed the same. There's a lot that shifted, but that's kind of my philosophy, and it's always been a approach. I mean, some of my professors loved it when I was in school, and some of them drove crazy just because. I mean, I was even when I was back in, secular college. I remember my sociology professor, who was an atheist. He told us to question everything, so I asked a lot of questions, and I questioned them cool God. And so, I'm, I mean, I have been stubborn before. I'm less of a heresy hunter than I was at one time. That's a whole other story. I had a mentor. We became a mentor at that point, but called me out on, heresy point and stuff like that. And so, we went through a whole thing where he really helped me have a paradigm shift and seeing things different. But man, there's been a lot that's shifted. For me, I mean, like I said, there's a lot that stayed the same. I think the biggest shifts that I've seen has been along eschatological lines, yeah, and end times. I went from, growing up, I didn't know these names. I was I'm gonna talk theology and like eschatology, you know, both together, but I was probably more dispensational. I didn't know what dispensationist was, any of these terms. Growing up, I just know what I learned and what I was taught, and more of a futurist type perspective. And then I went from there to more of a preterist, the never full preterists, partial preterists, meaning that you know uh, that most of Revelation, yeah, and in Matthew 24, stuff like that happened in the past, and in particular before 70 AD and the destruction of the temple. And so I was there for a long time and really didn't give much attention to the ideological perspective, which is really the symbolic, right? This isn't necessarily talking about particular events, but it's the symbols that we focus on. And that called my attention, and honestly, like reading at least Revelation through that lens, or really a lot of the apocalyptic language in the Bible, but really reading Revelation through that lens was big for me in understanding the book. For the first time, it cleared my eyes to be able to understand the book and the symbolism, and to take Jesus at his word, where he said, blessed are those who read this book and who heed its words. How do you heed its words? Everybody's just trying to decipher who the Antichrist is and, all these different things. But if you get at the heart of what the symbolism is, then ultimately wherever you land, what God is trying to communicate through the book. Like now I can take you through an outline that's not predicting, who's who and all this kind of stuff, but it's telling you what Jesus is doing from the time he takes the scroll until the time you have the victory in the new heavens and the new earth. You know what I mean? And so reading it from that ideological perspective has helped me. And I'm actually taking the church through this. Has helped me see clearly. So now I'm trying to help them do it. But now where I land, because I still think there's a lot of prayerism in that book. And so where I'm at now is called an eclectic view of Revelation. The only one that I've kind of thrown out the window is the historical perspective, because my understanding is that ended with the Reformation pretty much, because they all felt that they were living in the end times with the corrupt Catholic Church and stuff, and it didn't happen. And so I guess people have struggled shifting things, after that. And so now, and it kind of fits my view of prophecy and, the near and far and already and not yet and stuff like that is, I see it as, I read it through an ideological lens, realizing that there is a first century perspective written to a first century people going through first century struggles.
Yeah.
And then I hold with an open hand. That some people, this could drive crazy. I hold with an open hand the future, and so, I don't get into the details. I mean, I got stuff in my mind like, oh man, could this be wherever current event? I'd be lying if I said that's not going through my head. But I try to just stay curious about those things, and I think having the idealistic and the preterist in the background helps me stay grounded with that. And I know it's not my job to figure out if there's anything in the future. I just know Jesus is coming when that's what I'm. That's what I'm waiting for.
So with you, if you had your feet nailed down, are you an Amillennials? Are you
Like that? You know how to nail my feet down. I'm an all.
Yeah, it sounded like you are. Yeah, I said it sounded like you are from what you were describing.
Yeah,
You're describing a position on Revelation, but
yeah.
what you're going towards sound Amillennial.
But I jokingly said, you would get me in troubles because we'd have to devote another topic to this that you probably know through Randy and stuff. I'm not Reformed or Calvinist.
Yeah.
I am unique. Well, not unique. I used to feel like I was on the island. My mentor helped me get through that too, especially as a young minister going into seminary. They were like, man, I disagree with my professors here and there. And then in my own church, like, I disagree here. And it's just really like, it's not that they were unorthodox views. It was just like I felt like I had a view over here that didn't match this person or whatever, and so so what I was saying is like I may be a little unique, but I found a lot of teachers and authors that fall in the same camp as me. Usually, correct me if I'm wrong, Amillennials or Calvinists. Right?
There are a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot on, but I found a lot of Amillennialists that aren't Calvinists. So I follow also my trajectory from I was more dispensational, and I got into through a non-Calvinist actually, which he was good friends with the Calvinists. But you heard of Graphic. Yeah. Okay, so he was good friends with R.C. Sproul, and very much Calvinist, right? And he would always be on Hank Hanegraaff's show, and they would talk. I love seeing that. That's big to me. Church unity, we'd talk about that. Yeah. Before, and but I think both of them were probably in the Amillennial camp, but they weighed.
Now, this role is a preterist also. He's
partial preterist. Yeah, I read his book. For the Last Days According to Jesus.
That's right.
Yeah, I read that book. But yeah, I forgot where I was going with that towards the end. But yeah.
So would you say you're like decidedly covenantal, or?
Oh, that's what I was.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah. Thank you for following me. I need people in my life. Our other pastor Luke, he's really good at following me, and I need him to track me because I'm all over the place in my call seat because I did that. Or you can lose me now. But yeah, so Hank Hanegraaff, he wasn't a dispensationalist either, and he talked about that often. Well, so I started studying covenant theology, and this really made me feel on an island because I jived a lot with covenant theology. I was like, why is it called Reformed? And I know you know this, hopefully, maybe, I don't know. I mean that terms of when I say Reformed, because I used to get upset probably back when I was a heresy hunter. I used to get upset because I was like, man, I love the Reformation, and why can't I be called Reformed and not a Calvinist? Why do they have to have that term or whatever? So I love the Reformation, but anyways, he wasn't a Calvinist, but as I studied, I really jived with covenant theology. I still don't quite understand why it's just tends to be, more the Calvinist camp. And I thought those were the only two options, does it? Oh, I guess I'm weird that way. And then I discovered what's called New Covenant theology. Yeah. And that's where I am. I mean, that one, when I read it, I was like, this is how, my view, at least of scripture and where I land. But man, theology, I'm a big theology nerd. I could go on and on about shifts and rebellion and stuff like that. So I mean, I think it's a lot of fun. But
Yeah, well, I was gonna say what I think I appreciate about even just the three of you guys is you don't find many contexts in which discussions like that where we can be pretty specific about where I think I land on this, and this is where I'm still kind of struggling or figuring out how do these texts fit together. But to be able to have that kind of openness and transparency, even among pastors, and appreciate different perspectives too, like how do you landed there? Why is it that you like that? So anyway, it's nice to be around people that aren't so firebrandy that you can't you can't get a word in. He's like, no, it's not that way.
yeah, and I think I used to be more threatened, and I still. I mean, if you ask some of my good friends, there's been times where I think we all struggle or feel passionate up like that. Yeah, you get passionate or whatnot. But yeah, I learned Aubrey Spears. He's the mentor I was talking about, and really he just mentored me for a short period of time. But at the time, I was at the beginning of my ministry, and it was just a huge paradigm. He taught me how to handle those things with humility, and I try. I don't always do it perfectly, but yeah, I try to handle those things that way. And another thing, another friend of mine who was a pastor, he's more missionary now, but he pastored a church for years. I remember, us having those discussions. Even as a young minister, there was a lot of things that I was not completely fluid on, but I wasn't willing to, and just my messages. And that's just who I am.
That's really okay.
No, what I was gonna say though, Jess, is no, I embrace it. Yeah, being okay, especially when it comes to the non-essentials, and that was what Aubrey told me. When it comes to the non-essentials, man, I know we're passionate about it, and those are things that we should discuss. I mean, it's like Augustine said, with in essentials, in essentials, unity, in non-essentials, liberty, and all things, charity. And I wholeheartedly hold to that. Probably my pastor denomination church. Part of why I have you guys on a thing like this is because I believe in that unity. If we're not a Catholic church anymore, we've got to find a way to work together in the gospel. Despite seeing things different, and boy, do we find things to divide over. And like I said, I mean, we discussed if I started laying out all the things, you guys would be like, oh, well, I agree with that. No, oh, I don't agree with that. I agree with that. Or oh, I don't agree with that. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm still learning to this day. That's just kind of the way I approach those things. I know the core tenets of the faith, that you find in the creeds, and those where I hold too strongly the rest. I want to be teachable.
Excellent. Darren, same question you, Frank.
Yeah, I think a lot of for me was how I got my master's degree at Saddleback to Lloyd-Jones.
Which one you go to? Yeah, okay.
And then, but after that, I went to do ministry, which a lot to Anglican Episcopal mentorship. Learned a lot from all of them. And so I wouldn't say, I was fluid. I would say that I was not rigid outside. The things that were essential. I saw a lot that I liked. And I think, but I think also though as a pastor, my job is to shield in a conference. We have those conversations, but when you with them at a certain level, and it doesn't end right then those type of conversations. And I say that they're not very bad, of saying that way they have that I was presented. And that's true. And early on, you get to that point, and sometimes you're more versed about a lot and excited about something. So you want them to do that. You want them to be excited. And I was fortunate because of the community I grew up in, and they're like, don't care. The war is messed up. But that's kind of where they are, where they hung out. And that was good for me. So to always keep in mind that it doesn't matter if it doesn't land where they are. Yeah, so my body was, and to exegete scripture, exegete these positions in life, this you do with thyself. Different. Someplace else, and like you said, it's different, but I had life. So I think what's happening to me is they go from that point where it's right beliefs, right behaviors, young dudes, they're really sound, and nothing's wrong with that. I think over time, edges have gotten softer, and my core has gotten deeper, and he says that my convictions by what Jesus came to do are unshakable, but I present these different. And I think one thing that I would say that one thing I changed is that I believe in connection with it. I think really, I take especially oil on, we want to vet people and make sure that they are aligned with everything. I guess that's okay, but I think I always thought that people would commit to something they felt connected to more than just commit to something that you were. So I think, you could probably access earlier, I mean, God meets Moses in the wilderness for his sense of fire. And right now, if you're in the lecture area like I am hanging out, you're going to get to a point where they restore his creatures recipe. So I think where I am now, I believe in a lot more than formation, more than instruction. And I believe that I'm learning better to use race as its formative, whether it is a touches. Then this is, and so where I am now, catch me now the 2 years ago, everything that I could allow, it's formage. I always this formage shit into readiness build. What it does for me is it makes me a lot of medication first. Beats that whatever's happened now is part of the journey. It didn't need formation. It don't need you. Then beat it. The need the Holy Spirit. Jesus died for nothing. So all of you in this projects, I read people as what we do is through priesthood, faith, and life and community as funds. Which means that all of it means you talk about innovation, does it mean you do? Right? Like how is this forming how they live in this? No depth. All of us fall on the cart, seems like. But what are they supposed to take from that? How is that supposed to form? It's not about when quits. That be a silly place. It's about saying, see that right there? Monday morning, I'm supposed to do that. So we fixed on that. And just how does this, and it makes the choices that I made breathe. Like right now, which is the last time you said, you committed for the next couple of years to just literally increasing studies user be person. Nothing else. Ways that you may jump off into the Old Testament to see why he did it, or where it's predicted, or give some idea or how it fits and say why it covered. or biblical theology, and she made that. But with Sunray, he did say. And it's changed how we treat each other and then we expect from each other. This things like Jesus meets the disciples, like we wouldn't get any of it. Not a sinner, we would think. And on top of that, after he gets crucified and resurrected, they still really aren't anything right on her. But at the end of the day, what Paul wrote in Philippians about he who begins for birth, that's where I hang out. That we're just part of it too. How long these people live us, how is the deal? Shaping and funding. How do we deal with them at foods? How do we go to their gates? All that to me now from this. What can they expect from the community? And what does the community expect from that? How we measure that these things are having an effect. So I think it's about dispelling the theology and outrage to apply that way. That's what it's for anyway. It's right. It's just, it's good for us to be with have conversations like that, to work on. Like I immediately started reading about me in religious course because it kind of hangs out the way I am. The whole idea of us as disbanded. And I think that I read it to try to find ways to help them navigate where we are and where they are as not dislocated pieces of information. Yep. So, because I think before what would happen was, I would create something I just liked, but there was no overarching point to that. How is all is just going someplace? Yeah. And of course, I get it. All of it matters. All scripture, but I think that it always has to be outplayed. It is something you try and do. And once I kind of figured out that formation is more than differentiation, then it changed things for me. And this how it changed things. Yeah. Something to give a layout, like, that's what you get ready to do for this piece. Right. So while I may not be explicitly political on Sunday, I do read the news. And the job then becomes, how do we live to act that? Now, for example, you think about the resurrection in John 20. Jesus, the grace behind his life, doing everybody's in there. And one of the things that struck me was, he's resurrected it. Everybody that's in charge is still in charge. Everybody. King's third king, Roman spill, anybody Caesar, high priest still in charge. Everybody that deal with that before is still there. Except his expectations are doing that change. And I try to use things like that to say, whatever you feel about who's in charge, he expects it to you. Yeah. Then that's me. Yeah, it's better, right? So I think all that to say that the biggest thing that changed me is how he trained formation.
Is that like, to me, correct me if I'm wrong here, Darren, would you say that teaching is one of the tools in the toolbox that lands toward formation, but it's not the totality of what gets you there, right?
That's true.
It's like you don't have formation apart from teaching. Teaching has to be part of that. But it's possible if you're just teaching that you're not actually engaged in the greater work of formation.
That's correct. Yeah, that is correct. You can, some people teach to show you how much they go. Yeah. Right? The only person who did that edifies him wasn't he tell? Right? But there are people that are not going to be able to teach. But there are people who always deal with that fallen calling in the right? One of the most underrated spirituals this to me is people who can encourage. And people get formed by it. They've been formed by, this is what I can expect from this belief. Or this is a way I can serve. But I think for you to think about those things from that lens, you tend to give people, we found that people didn't love Christopher because we also said that, the majority of you here are not going to teach anything. and work as a pastor and then minister and then a Christian. So what is your ability? So after that case, right? There's some things the community still has the right to expect it. That's part of the larger thing in the door. So that's a kind, and that was because I'm getting forward in the too.
That's great. Well, it also makes it really clear that as a pastor, if you're called to equip the saints for ministry, like they're part of, like they're doing ministry with you, right?
Sure.
It's not you doing the ministry and they're all just spectators.
Right.
Yeah, we're all engaged in this.
All right, man.
So I was gonna to follow from that, maybe share a couple of things briefly for me, especially since I got Scott taps that kind of parts teachable to share. So and I appreciate that a whole lot, Scott. I would say a couple things quickly, and all of these can be talked about a lot more. And I welcome the conversation. You guys are going to talk about it, sure. But you had a couple things. So early on in ministry, I'm in youth ministry and struggling with the doctrines of grace, Calvinism, Arminianism, all of that for quite a while, and come through a period of time in which I become pretty convinced of what we would refer to as Calvinism, Reformed theology, and so what you experience with Revelations, kind of what I experience with Ephesians 1 or Romans 9, or like Halson, like this passage now makes sense to me. That would be my way of expressing that. Like, all these texts of the Bible now make sense. It all fits. It feels like it fits in a way that has never fit before for me. So I had that kind of experience, and that was really early on in ministry, and kind of thankful for that because it kind of has a few more implications in the way in which I would preach and handle the way I might even make gospel calls and stuff like that. We're still engaged in gospel calls no matter what, but just slight variations on how I might approach that. And so it's also maybe more prayerful because I really do believe that God has to save them, that kind of thing. But so I had that happen. I'd grown up in a very like kind of what I would say almost ultra mystical approach to like the will of God. And that was almost hamstringing my ability to make decisions. I had a really hard time with trying to go to college. Where do I go? How do I know which one God wants me to take? And so I would do crazy things like, well, I don't want to think about all the options, so I'll just send my application to one. And then we don't have to worry about it. They'll say yes, I don't know how I'd answer it. And that was, I would call that immature decision making. And a lot of it was because I was searching around for like still small voices and not knowing if that was my voice or the Lord's voice or somebody else's voice, or and so it was just really, really a hard time. And so I came across a book called Decision Making the Will of God, and then a flurry of other resources along that line, and just came to such a, what I would argue is a more biblical way of approaching that, and it removed some of the mysticism of it and gave me a lot more confidence in like enjoying like options, and that God provides the options and it's really okay. And God provided boundaries that were to stay within, but you really have freedom. You could buy that shoe or that shoe and it's not going to be the end of the world, like that kind of thing, right? So, and obviously,
tell me the shoe.
Yeah. And it got, I always use those examples because obviously everybody's just like, well, just tie your shoes, man. It doesn't matter, right? But sometimes if you get down to the, like, well, every little detail matters, right? So it kind of gets hard to like, you almost get paralyzed in decision making. So that was a really helpful thing for me. A little bit later on, and this is where I'd say the rest of ministry kind of becomes just a strengthening and like a realization of like, oh, I think I've always struggled trying to bring these things together. And now I've found, oh, this guy's saying it the way I think I always would have if I knew how to say that. So I had a similar experience with New Covenant theology. I would probably call myself a progressive covenantalist now, but it's very much along those lines. And yeah, so progressive covenantalism it pretty much wants to make it a big deal of the role of covenants through the Bible. So it's gonna acknowledge covenant theology in those regards, but it's gonna make a big deal out of the new covenant being also some amount of distinction from the old. So like what you have in covenantal theology often is a lot of continuity. So like it's all one big story. Like a lot of things that we would like, oh yeah, that sounds right. And, you know, we're all saved by grace. Yeah, yeah. That, you know, whether you're the Old Testament or New Testament, you know, we'd all agree with that kind of thing probably. We would. Good. Because this, you know, classic dispensationalists, I'm not dumb. But most dispensationalists I meet are leaky anyway, so they also agree with that, right? But then the points of discontinuity, which especially as Baptists, like we would, and if you believe in believer's baptism and you don't baptize infants, then you are making a distinction between circumcision and baptism, stuff like that, right? And so we're saying the new covenant is not just the old covenant. It's new and better, you know, that kind of thing, right? So I like progressive covenantalism because what it wants to say is that there's not only covenants, but there's a progress in the covenants. And so the new covenant is better. Like so there's a marked change when Jesus arrives on the scene. Right. So anyway, and we can get into this more. But so that was one of those things where I always found myself going, I'm not a dispensationalist. I'm also not a covenantalist. Who am I?
Yeah.
Like, and I would hear a dispensationalist describe certain things, just to put my cards on the table. I'm still a futurist when it comes to the Book of Revelation. So I'm a premillennialist still, but I'm not I'm a historic premill guy. So like, I read it a little bit more like we are getting a plan of what's going to happen, but I still would agree with you. If you start to try to put those things on the big charts and maps, you're in dangerous waters. Yeah. You know, so like, I would say, I think this happens a lot, the prophecy, right? Like, God tells enough that when it happens, it's clear that God called it. Like, oh, God could, I said it would happen. But not so much that we become like confident in our own understanding of that prophecy, right? That's why. So you always do it after the fact. After the fact, it's clear. Like, oh, this is exactly what he was doing.
Just gotta go back to the first coming of Christ. Nobody even got on disciples.
Right. Right. But we look back on that and it's so obvious, right? It's the most obvious thing you've ever seen.
Isaiah 53 is right there.
Yeah, right. Jesus says, you know, if you read the scriptures, they're all about me, but it is all about me, right? If you miss me, you've missed the whole thing. So that kind of idea. So like there's another one eschatologically, and that's a more recent thing for me. I'll say one other thing. Role of government and the role of the church in relationship with the government. COVID. That forced that discussion in a way that when the government's closing churches in the heirs of public health, and now we as pastors have to confront that idea. Do we close the doors and not let people come because the government says you can't meet? What does Romans 13, submission to governing authorities, mean? And to what extent does that go? That was a big time for me, like a big consideration and reading and like, how does the church handle these kinds of questions? And so anyway, I've come to some more clarified, because like, I don't know if you guys ever thought about this before, like the American Revolution. If we were alive then, you were a pastor in the colonies, would you have supported the revolution, or would you have said we need to obey the King of England? You know, like we don't have to deal with that question right here because we're not there, but they did. And there was a lot of pastors that had to decide, what do I do with my church, like my congregation? Like, am I supporting this, the revolution, or should I be telling our people, hey, submit to King? You know, so those are sometimes some of those questions you don't have to deal with because they're not there in front of you, and then sometimes that question comes right up to you, and there's no avoiding it. And so I would say COVID for me. I tell people I got inoculated against governmental intervention through COVID. So the one thing I will not do again is close my doors for any amount of time because of a perceived pandemic, unless I saw complete dead bodies all over the streets. If that was the case, I kind of feel like we should still meet together because the Lord is worth it. And people need the gospel. People are dying. Christians have always been the ones that have gone into the fray to care for people in hard places. So anyway, for me, those are kinds of moments where I would say I didn't have a codified understanding of what I thought about Romans 13. I had some leanings about it, but as I kind of came through there a little bit further, I'm like, I think what has happened for a lot of people is that they've afforded the government far too much authority. I think that the government has been given authority from God, just like pastors have, just like husbands have. There's a delegation of authority, but that's not a blank check for everything that you haven't, you know. So the government wants to say everything they want to say, the Constitution says they can't, but everything that hasn't been claimed by you is ours. And I would say, no, you have the authorities and powers that have been granted you, but nothing more than that. So anyway, those are kinds of moments for me, like where you're then looking at people in your church and you're having to navigate that, right? Are you going to mask or not? Are you going to social distance or not? Those are, and you can't punt on the question, can you? Like, we as a church are going to do something. We're either going to do it or not, or we're going to allow it or not, or we're going to...
And I had people on both sides.
I did
In
too.
my church, yeah. It was, I mean, thankfully, we've got a healthy church and there wasn't any division. But it concerned me. Every Sunday come into church, it concerned me. One thing I will say about the government thing, and I think for a lot of pastors, no, we closed for a while and then we were open for a while. We did the online for a while. We did open, took a mask and stuff like that. And I don't think the churches that closed, I don't think it was all just because the government told them to. It's a time period. Of course, there's still differences, of opinions on COVID and what, just like in the church, there is amongst pastors. And so I think for a lot of pastors, just like we were, and you talk about your struggles and stuff, we're trying to make the best decision for them with the information they had. So I feel like for a lot of pastors, it wasn't about, oh, the government's making us shut down. They chose to shut down because, I mean, if it would have been the Black Plague, you have that decision, you're responsible for people's lives and you got to make a decision and stuff like that. And so
I think the other part about that conversation that bothers me is the Romans 13 conversation is always entirely colorful. The my group's in charge, you read Romans being say cheer, right? And my group is not in charge, we want rovers. And so I think that conversation is difficult because of these same people who were anti-Romans 13 they did not regard Romans 13 for COVID, would then immediately apply from the 13 plus I be agreed. So I think in the conversations is difficult because right now it's at least intellectually dishonest. Yeah, right. Because and it's not everybody. People who wasn't that amplified. I don't even have to guess how they feel about Romans 13, depending on how they vote. Right? And that's the trial. We've taken we sealed the moral highway on a scripture out there, almost entirely to politics. And it's difficult to have a conversation here because people who have not navigated that conversation in good faith have spoken for the rest of us. Right? And so it's difficult to have a conversation with others.
yeah, it's probably a conversation that we should delegate for part 4 or 5. But yeah, y'all are 3 and 4, so it's probably 5 or 6. And the Romans 13, we could have a lot of interesting conversations, kicking that around. I think for me, just in short, that was written during a time of Nero and a lot of corruption stuff. So for me, we have a completely different government, where there are disagreements. Like you said, people, have those disagreements. But as far as being, stopping at stop signs and not stealing from a neighbor and stuff like that, those are things I need to, the government, that's the way I see it anyways. The government's it bears the sword for a reason. Obviously, there are different levels of corruption. It seems like every other government has some corruption in it, but I think in God's, which won't be perfect until the Messiah returns, but I think God put government in place, for a reason. In that perfect world, it functions, and it's supposed to function in a broken world to allow us to function as citizens within a country. It's just so broken and messed up, and in our country, being a democracy, we all have a voice, and voting rights and all that kind of stuff. So there are disagreements.
Yeah, just to clarify, like I feel what you were saying earlier. I would fight for the right for every pastor, every congregation to freely make those decisions, right? Whether you gather or not, and with no judgment on the pastor who says we're going to close our church. He has to make the decision that is given to him.
Yeah.
My point is just that the government shouldn't be the one dictating to churches what they do. That's where I say they've overstepped the bounds.
That's how I took what you said. Yeah. I think what happens is that when I take it that way. Yeah, I took it that way because you were clear. I think and cash it. Yeah, I think what it goes for us is that my comments was simply about that why the conversation and not sharing like this. Yeah, right. About that individual choices. This is what I think, and I'm going to apply this picture to everybody. I think that's the part, and not just about this issue, or a lot of other issues. And the pendulum sways after a few years, depending on who's real, you in charge. That's why I say conversations like this, and that's what makes it difficult. So, no way I say that I'm the good at.
I agree. You see that happening even in Congress, don't you? So you'll see that at some point the Democrats or the Republicans, one or the other, will have more people, and whoever has more people, the other one will use the filibuster to stop it from going through, right? And so what does that do? We need to get rid of the filibuster. And then they're like, no, we don't want to do that because the lesser voice wants to stop this from going through, right? But then the moment it flips, now the other side, like, we need to get rid of the filibuster, right? So, yeah, it's like, wait, don't you remember that just 4 years ago you said that we need this in order to stop things from just going through, right? So I'm with you. Like, there has to be consistency in the way in which we apply scripture. So we're not playing heretical games.
Yeah.
Just to profit ourselves. So, yeah. Is there another question we want to be at?
Man, I think we've got two of them here.
Okay.
Let's see where you'll go. See how quickly.
Like you want to do the. Okay, let's do let's throw this one out there. So if you were preparing a young pastor for ministry, what advice would you offer?
I have a 30-second answer.
Okay, cool.
If I were preparing them ministry, I would tell them to give it to go into the formation, conversation happen. Ministry is complex in ways of listening. Most people now know that pastoral is a fire because they can't reach. Could they parent it? They have low administrative intelligence. They have low administrative skills. They all think about the heavy tuning strategy and tactics. And working. And also, you also need some practical theology. Like, how is what I'm talking in method don't work for any period of time. You've seen how what you see on Sunday lands on land. Because you have to practice the same thing that told them to practice. And so you immediately are empathy to your natural foot. And so I found that a job, even if they go to a situation that's sort of fun there, they will have skills that you will be in others. They got to learn how to follow people. They got to learn how to lead people. You get the performance, the success. You have to lead with direct power. You have to read soft power. All those things happen in the church. And when the wheels come on, it tends to be one of those things. And I try to operate in those areas more than I do with a pulpit in that state. And to the degree that the things really don't work, they tend to work because I could do it other things. So I found that being able to have that conversation, if nothing else, it gives you credibility with the other members of the congregation. They think that you're not conversing, that Microsoft Excel will tell them either. Right? But the ability to be full and more than our neighbors for certain love message.
Nice.
That Microsoft Excel. And that was longer than 30 seconds. That was pretty God to say.
Those are preacher seconds right there.
I have conversations with young pastors more often than not, see right now. And I used to be a young pastor, I'm the older. That's overnight, doesn't it?
Also young pastors here.
Yeah. But main thing that I always tell young pastors, and this is really in the context of the American church. Sometimes we go in and we think that we can just change stuff overnight. That we can go in and I don't know what the pastor was doing for you, but I'm coming in and I'm going to preach. We will just grow overnight. And they go in trying to make changes and going trying to operate in a system of structure, which it espouses the people who been in the church all their life and not realize that it takes time. And so I go in, I tell them, let's go to the church with 2 bands. Love the people, show them you can preach. Love and show them you can preach. Do that for the first year. Try and make any changes unless you just have to grit your teeth. Unless you have to grit your teeth. I'm trying to make any changes until they trust you. You can really get to a place where they trust you then. They know that you are concerned about the church. It's not about trying to enforce you over your group. Yeah, your turn.
Yeah, that's good, preacher. Extent. Man, the problem is I didn't copy who I choose. Yeah, they're prepare to be bivocational. A little bit different reasoning. I do, in fact, is interesting. This came up because I was literally reading through these questions full left, and my youngest is telling me that first of all, he's going with his friend from the Elijah. Daxon's going with Elijah to visit a Eastern Orthodox church because he likes to visit different types of churches, which I think's awesome. If he's Daxon's an intellectual, but anyways, he's expressive. He has some interest in ministry, and so I was giving him advice, and I looked down and used the question. So it kind of fit, but yeah, I told him, it can't be about the money. Yeah. Outsiders seem to have this illusion that, pastors somehow make a lot of money and we're all broke.
I'm going to work one day.
Yeah, exactly. But you can't make it about the money. But my main reasoning has to do with statistics. It all goes back to, the small church stuff is like 80% of churches are under 100. So statistics show that you're not going to be pastoring, a big church. If you do, praise God, that's awesome. But, prepare to be, bivocational, and stay teachable. So extremely important. You mentioned emotional maturity. Not only was Christians or even pastors, I think we all lack. I think the more self-awareness we'd have, we realize how much emotional maturity we lack. But it's amazing. I think people take for granted, not just in ministry, but in general, in leadership period, whether it's politics or whatever, how much emotional maturity matters to a great leader. And so, yeah, staying teachable, stay humble, and then, and make sure, from my own experience, make sure that you have good support around you, because all this struggles that I named earlier in the church, it was because I just planned over this church. Some of it I had to because I wasn't a part of the big church that could fund it and give me the leadership. But I jumped out and took we had a small group and we started meeting in the house and stuff, and I just didn't have that leadership and support, and it came back and bit us early on. But like I say, God was good, and we eventually made it.
How do you define emotional maturity? You said you think it's important for the young pastor to have that. What would you say? How does somebody know if they're emotionally mature?
Or science. Yeah, I mean, one of the ways the Bible describes it is self-control. Being able to listen and be curious. Obviously listen to God, listen to other people, listen to things that are unwise. One things I learned about anxiety, a lot of people think about anxiousness just as like having anxiety problems. Like, I'm taking medication for my shaky hands because there's some kind of nerve system, but I'm taking anxiety meds because it helps calm everything down. A lot of people think about anxiety in those terms. People don't realize, and thanks to the Bible, because it expresses anxiety in terms of worry. A lot of people think about anxiety just worry, but faith walking ministry really helped me understand not only emotional maturity, but anxiety, which is one of the main sources behind us being emotionally immature, and not being able to be self-differentiated, be totally ourself and in self-control, no matter the situation. But anxiety to me is anytime that you're not driving the bus, anytime you're not behind the wheel, anytime you do something you don't want to do. And we're more self-awareness I've become, and I can realize that happens a lot. Anytime I react, anytime I do something that if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't do it. Even the little things. Anxiety is driving the bus. So we all have anxiety. It just is, because there's acute anxiety, there's a bear in the woods, fight or flight, right? But in life, we mimic chronic anxiety, which we all struggle with as fallen human beings, is fight or flight mechanism used when there's not a true threat. So you mentioned, like, you talk about Calvinism. I'm not saying this happening, but I've given an example. The fight or flight response comes up. You start getting your defenses come up. Because you got those chemicals going to your brain. I believe it's part of our fallen, our fallen humanity, even when we're redeemed. And so, emotional maturity, walking in the Spirit. It's learning to do that. You know what I mean? But I think a lot of us, we think about the do's and don'ts, of the Bible and obeying God in that way. But one of the things that I've realized, the more I've understood this, is like how many of us don't understand this concept, and when we do, we're afraid to let God in to those areas, because when we start working our emotional maturity, it's directly linked. I think you can distinguish, there's a little bit difference, but there's a direct link. I think emotional maturity is a part of spiritual maturity. Will that make sense? And so I think that people can see themselves as spiritually mature and doing things for the Lord, and they're missionaries and they're doing this, but maybe totally blind to the fact that they're not letting God shine areas, into areas that are vulnerable, you know what I mean? That God knows to work on. So that's all kind of, I don't know if that answered the question.
Well, we gotta go through the process of spiritual formation for yourself before you really reach the spiritual maturity, because you go in with the idea, you go in with the ideology, you go in with the a foundation which you learned it. But when we start doing it, we have to rebel, kind of go on spiritual formation. I think that begins to play a role in it. If you stay in that box, you won't work, and you'll find yourself setting yourself up for failure with the lack of emotional maturity, because what you're doing is not working. You're just taking against the bricks. You're constantly trying to put a square peg on a round circle, and it's not working. It's because you won't get yourself on to grow and expand beyond the boundaries. But that only comes by having the conversations like you're having, and saying who you are, and beyond, and recognizing that that's not necessarily what we preach. That's for me to grow in my own maturation, so that I can discern how I can help build the relationship of spiritual formation within myself that can help the church.
Yeah, and be a healthy pastor. You know, we the phrase hurt people, heal people, heal people. And so when we heal that, you know, I used to be just like all anti self-help, but I realized spiritual formation, emotional maturity, Holy Spirit, it's a form of self-help. If you look at it, is like the more we allow God to heal us, the more we're going to be better God imagers in the word. So
Can I add one more thing that I would say to young pastors for that? I really with this belief. Have friends. For the long time, I hold for long their pastors. They won't. I saw pastors in passing had association but not fellowship for a long time. Long time. Have friends. I don't know if there was context of the, you know, your name at this church bred competition because our itinerary system, we don't trust, and you always feel like someone's, you know, eyeing what you have. And that also, when you're in just amongst other churches, Darren and I cross over each other. No competition. God has Darren for Darren. Well, I has for me. Love it. Darren is who he is. People that live for Darren, not live for me. So I'll be real someone not live for Darren. You know? But you know, the competition, yes, trying to beat the biggest church, trying to be remote, have most people, have most money, and be popular, it isolates. This leads some exhausting.
that's why I was saying like my best friends in the ministry have been like Randy Turners and stuff, you know, missionaries, you know, people doing that because they're not, there's no competition there for them. And I feel like they're more real and down to earth. I feel like we've got our guards up. And so, yeah, not only having friends, but pastors, why I started my youngest, but your pastor friends, be real with each other. So that's why I love you guys, because I feel like, you know, y'all are real and y'all allow me to be real. And I feel like there's that safe place to do it. There's no threat. Going back to the threat, there's no bear in the woods there, you know, with you guys. And, yeah, I'm with you. I think pastors in general, need to have other pastor friends and put their guards down you. But
I'm in a much better place now because I have pastor free.
it's good.
I just add, thought that was in my mind is I would tell a young man, character over craft. So I think there's a lot of guys that think about, I want to be exceptionally skilled at preaching. Certainly, we know that the qualification for elder, the difference between it and deacons is that they're able to teach. So you have to have some amount of ability to teach. And so if some guy comes to me and say, "Hey, I'm considered pastor," the first thing I'll say is like, "Have you signed up to teach Sunday school? Are you discipling anybody?" So you can work on that craft. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, but it's worth nothing. You guys use the word formation, use character, use fruit of the spirit, whatever you want to insert here. If that's not there, then all the rest of it is empty and vain. And we've seen far too many moral failings of pastors and the perk that's caused. That's devastating. And so if it's just I'm a professional, I'm doing my thing, and it's not arising from a deep, deep love for Jesus, a concern for the glory of God, everything else, I feel like if that's in place, then everything else will come into place. So I would also say things like biblical fidelity above popularity, right? So like if what I have to preach today is this text of scripture, and I know there will be half of my church that's not going to like it, but I believe that that is absolutely the truth of God's word, I have to preach that. Like that's what they need to hear, the truth. Now I need to speak that in love. I need to make sure I'm doing all I can. So the next thing would be like, remember you're a shepherd. Yeah. You know, you're again, some of us, I mean, I think every pastor on some level appreciates and loves preaching. I don't think otherwise you'd be doing it. So like we love preaching and it's exceedingly important in the life of the church. But remember that you're a shepherd, and a shepherd does more than just preach. Yeah, and that's all that formation stuff you were talking about. A shepherd cares for sheep that are hurting. A shepherd puts his arm around someone who's mourning. A shepherd is willing to help someone move. A shepherd is willing to, get down on the floor and pick up trash because somebody left it behind. No task too small, no task too big, no task too small. And carrying ourselves with that kind of attitude.
It's amazing you said that because when you talk about Christendom concepts, one of the reasons why I put my prison calendar and where so I'm up with. Yeah, right. So we already know. Yeah. You can stay home. That's saying and stuff and that. But you will know I'm not talking about you because 6 months ago or 2 years ago, your dad's, and you've been taking. It's what's coming next. What's next is it keeps me from getting. And other thing you said, we're talking about earlier about difficult season. What a difficult season. But one of the things I had to learn was that giftedness did not necessarily mean breadths. I thought early on in how the day guys passes, really were good at some, and the character didn't back up.
Yeah.
The gifts. And I would say we got do-overs. Now God was kind, good, sacrificing. But that was all exactly it. That was me. Especially when you're small, you feel like somebody fell in the lap. Oh yeah, I do some stuff, yeah. And what bothered me about it was, if I cared to see it, I wasn't deceived. I just didn't want to see. Didn't want to say it. Wasn't inconvenient. Yeah, didn't want to say it. And so I passively repent for it. Yeah, and to be a lot more intentional about saying, let's just we don't answer now, right? And all the time, not only do I see it, other people say it. Both ways, and it makes it easier to say.
Another thing I thought of, I think you fit one is get ready for the bumps and bruises. And explain the joy of the ministry, but I think we do them a disservice if we, because yes, young people see ministry as this glorious, glamorous thing, all for the glory of God, I'm doing this, and they don't see the bumps and bruises that, one, the enemy hates us, and two, God allows us to go through those things. So I'll never forget, I heard a minister say this at a pastor's conference, that so that when you stand up there and you're reading scripture, it's real to you. It's not just words in a book. So yeah,
The same Hosanna moment they crucify you next. I think one of the greatest challenges that I've seen transpire in the church of the last 20 years is young preachers find out that they could preach. The worst thing that happened to a preacher is to find out to preach. Then it's worse than have to preach. I tell my men preachers, I damn if I ever preach a bit, sir, I'm probably going to retire. I'm probably going to retire. It's super real. I see, boy, yeah, on that bill. But I think the greatest threat, young preachers find out they can preach. And because of that, they think they should pass. Just because you can preach does not mean you should be pastor. Because the character, leadership skills, both spiritual formation. I reckon,
And do it every week is hard.
yeah, every week, yeah.
I mean, that's fully saturated. Every week?
Yeah.
Man, you know how quick Sunday comes?
Yeah.
stop calling the pastor the preacher too. Right? That instills that idea that, pastor is just preaching,
But to his point, that's often what churches call. And so where does a disproportionate amount of effort go over to? And typically when we know them, why do we know them? We know them because they have a sexual Christian business, right? And sometimes we will excuse poor character or that because they have exceeded that is a preacher bit, right? So that's exactly what they say. If you reward that, that's exactly what you're gonna get.
Okay. All right.
All right, so our last one tonight is Any books you'd like to recommend? You said that if you wanted to bring a couple, you did. I brought way too many.
Yeah, I already know possibility. Said that yes.
Well,
Late breaking ideas.
I have a couple.
Okay, cool.
I got my audio books.
I have a couple of
Yeah, I'm going to write these down because the primary reason I asked the question is so I can, worry about some of the books.
Jack Calvin and all there.
But Calvin is a scene
Amen.
that is just required to read.
Amen.
Right. In fact, you should probably do a series about Calvin involvement in the church. It has to be some similarity.
But mom,
There's just the three that I'm working through now. One of them is called Joys for Outsiders. Right. Talks about 6 ways to live like Jesus in disoriented culture. I like books like this because I think they do, the others are liking, they do a good job of helping people understand the times. They help bridge between what just preached on Sunday and how they feel and how they center themselves into that. Like, what does this mean? Like, you may wonder, you may feel like you're the only one that thinks the culture is disordered. Well, does it sound with, oh, I could feel, of course, but no, not bias. The key ways I think I like about it is living like Jesus didn't live, not being a cultural warrior. Right? It's like I have a responsibility to one like you. So I like this. And then one of my favorite writers of Substack is Sandra James. He's taking the Greek, but he has a book called Digital Liturgies. And he talks about recovering Christian wisdom in an online age. And I like him. And one of the things I like about him, other than just how easy the book read is that he has people that we would consider on the right and the middle and the left and all that there's to be, which isn't exceedingly difficult to all right. And then one local author, Steve Desmond. Steve was a pastor at Houston Northwest Church, I believe, for a long time. He's now a faculty at Truity Bill. But he wrote a book called The Jesus is to America. And he just talks about kingdom boundaries versus the American dream. And I like that. And I think all these books are just aimed right at where we are. And what I like about it is that they all just put an idea about Jesus and allow you to weigh yourself with this. Nobody gets called out. Nobody is terrible. It's just that here's what he said, and how do we measure this there? And there. So I think I like those becoming they're not clears. They just help you understand that there is some cultural dislocations, and they're not the only that feeling it, and they're not the only ones that are feeling it. It is not new, and the word of God has something to say.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, you two. May I add anything?
For me in this season, I'm really focused more on leadership and administration in my business and then trying to balance 12-hour days, 60-hour weeks. We really focus on the leadership and administration. Leadership. Administration has really been coining my fish, really working in systems. And so books that I've been listening to on audio books with my time driving. I've been listening to Essentialism by McKeown. It's a book that really talks about how you capture, narrow your vision to focus, make the main things, turn with be intentionally in things that give you energy to things that you're prioritize. Another book that I recently listened to was Seven is an old book. 7 Habits of Highly Successful People by Stevie Cope. I really enjoyed that one. I think I'm just to that again, in fact. He offered some great insight and wisdom, hearing about administration, leadership, prioritizing, understanding what's important, what's essential, what's important to others is not essential. So trying to prioritize and how I navigate things. So for instance, like this was a labor of love, but this goes into the highly essential. And so I strategized for that. I made my schedule in a plan for the day so I could get off early and I could be there in time that I was able to get to town around 3 o'clock. And just really being very strategic about that. And then just for me, for my own spiritual enrichment, I'm listening to a little by Dr. Connie Others. Wonder in every word, I will turn the others. Wonder in the words, break book, Krejchi teacher. The word God, or how it makes an impact in the life of us and the life else. So those are 3 that I've been listening to over this season. I just got a book from like John Ada. Getting ready to start reading Park. That physical kind of even start reading. Cardi next week or so. I forget the name up there.
Are we doing books that we're into now, or just like have impacted his whole life?
I think that it was a bit of a wide open potential because I was thinking more like things that impacted me in the past, but you can absolutely go either way. You can describe what you're doing now, or you could do.
I'll go both. I'll be short.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're gonna talk now, I mean, I just kind of Project Ken Mary.
Okay. Yeah. Did you like it?
It was amazing. Yeah, my first ending movie was probably my top 5 movies. I needed a favorite movie because I kept going back to Gladiator. I was like, dude, that was like 2000. I need to do new favorite.
That's not a problem for Hollywood.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, consolidated.
Well, it's their Hollywood's suffering. Alabama the movie 2 times basically. Yeah. But yeah, Project Hail Mary, and I actually just read a book and introduced it to the church. So several people reading it in church. Bless the Misfits. By what's his name? You remember Sean? Brant Hansen. He was actually a DJ, a Christian DJ. But he's autistic. He's got Asperger's disease, and it's about being, different in the church, and it's okay, and God still loves us, and he talks about things. I mean, he talks about all kinds of things, but he talks about his autism doesn't allow them to feel. So if you don't feel anything, then he's, worshiping God and stuff like that. He struggles with emotion, and so he shares all those quirks with people, not just about autism, but these different ways that there's space in God's kingdom for the misfits, for the people that are different. So I really enjoyed that book. I would recommend for that book to do the audio book. They'll hand it out hard copies here because he reads it, and he's a very entertaining. He's a very entertaining. Blessed of the Misfits. And y'all know I never shut up about this one, so I'll be sure that's the grasshopper myth. That was the bigger paradigm change for me with small church. What's that book? Carl Vader's. Yep, Carl Vader's. The grasshopper myth. Can't say enough about this book. Every small church pastor should read it. Every large church pastor should read it. Because I think we're all in this together, and small churches aren't a thing to be fixed. They're going to be celebrated, and so that was big for me. These things just come out on with talking and stuff. New Covenant Theology was big for me.
I read that one.
Yeah, and it's a small book. It's really just an introduction. You get to know the church of it. Yeah, very approachable. Another approachable One other one. Just like Pastoral, that is big for me. It is a surprise by both band too, right? Yeah. Yes, so he's one of my faves. Just that uh new heavens and new earth understanding. He's there really good grasp on that, and about the kingdom. And speaking of the kingdom, a book that's really been speaking to me. I really appreciate the author. Have you heard of him, Scott Ash? Well, I kind of plug my blood. Yeah, I mean, you open the west side, you open the door. Oh, go out there, Scott Ash, you go for justice. It got yeah. It's about the kingdom, which I think we need a lot of today. What the kingdom is, we talked about emotional maturity. That's in there. That's a part of it. It's about what it means to live. So living out God's kingdom, I think, is huge for me because we're not just, salvation in a Christian life isn't about a ticket to heaven. That's the cherry on top. We see Jesus talk about eternal life, and that's the reason I preach. I mean, I appreciate a lot about him, though, about into T. Wright. It's about resurrection. It's not about going to heaven. So that's part of it. Eternal perspective is realizing that God wants to renew the earth, not take us off somewhere else. We've got it all backwards in our modern Christian culture. But also the other part of that is realizing we really do have a purpose now. And yes, the Great Commission is a huge part of that. But like we said earlier, like you can have all the right theology. You can even, I can C.S. Lewis talk about, you can even be an evangelist and not have the love of God in you. I think what we're really called to do, which the Great Commission is an extension of that, is we're called to be image bearers. And we're called to live. And once we're invited and accepted into the kingdom, we're called to live out that kingdom life. And so, anyways, that's my shameless plug.
Awesome.
Cool.
But very safe. And in the words of actually not Garth Brooks but Billy Joel, I'm saying.
So full disclosure, I'm a decent Baptist that my theology is about this. And I'm very, very into theology. Very into theological. My approach to school was, whatever I need to put on the tech, A. Okay. I may not agree with you. I'm not going with you. And, we go through lots of vida. N.T. Wright became my favorite willow that he's best.
Yeah, he's my favorite too. He's gotten a lot of flack, which I don't think is deserved. That's a whole other episode. I think
Is he perspective?
huh?
Yeah, is he perspective?
Somewhat, but you don't have to be fully on board with that. I could do a whole discussion on especially MacArthur, the way he attacked him, but that's another discussion.
Yeah, it's like
I have to control my emotional maturity.
parts of it.
Yeah, I have to control my emotions when it comes to that, because I am defensive of N.T. Wright. You might not agree with him at all, but he is not a heretic whatsoever. So he
That's so worse than me.
it doesn't.
If you just disagree with someone,
Yeah, and people who don't read and it's spend the time investing in somebody and
Isn't it the same thing though that happened with racism? Everybody's called a racist, so then it makes it like there are actual racists, right? There are actual people who are like really steeped in it, and that word needs to have meaning.
yours need to mean something.
But the problem is that when you call everyone it, then it doesn't mean much anymore. Like,
Everyone is no.
seriously, I keep joking about it, but that's another, not just racism, but this is episode 17. But no, the words, going back to Hank Hagraff, he's the one who taught me that way back when, is words have meaning.
yeah,
But one thing I've learned since then is like words quickly take on different definitions. And so even in our subcultures, a word can mean one thing to one group and have a total different meaning, and we're arguing about that word without every, because most people won't listen to each other. I didn't context. Yeah, there's no context, and so people start fighting over a certain word or phrase or term or whatever, and they really don't understand what that person means by it or the whole backing behind it. Another topic, like I said, episode 60 for people. We should probably close it out, huh?
Well,
Oh, you got more? Oh, you don't?
1800 my 55 blows.
Yeah.
I need this quick.
Trying to shut you down.
So we talked about what you'd say to a young pastor. Lectures to My Students by C.H. Spurgeon. It's Spurgeon can be a little bit hard to read, but the very first couple chapters of this are fantastic. One of the things I always remember about this book is he says, it's typical thing is like, I couldn't do anything else, so I became a pastor. You would argue only those who could do anything else should be pastors. Like his point is like, this isn't something you just flop into because you failed at everything else.
Right.
Yeah, it's be something that like we hold in high regard, like only the best.
Oh, I'm not writing this down because I'm actually gonna watch book 5.
Oh yeah, cool. How can I not mention Chosen by God, Scott? I mean, this is.
But you
gotta shameless plug. So I got Kin with it. I get Chosen by God. This is transformative. You gotta read it. If you haven't read it, you need to read it, and you can disagree with it.
Yeah,
That's okay.
and
by the way, I'll say N.T. Wright. I've read several N.T. Wright. I don't agree with him everywhere, but I can appreciate.
Yeah, he's some what MacArthur said. That's all I ask.
Well, same with MacArthur. Like I appreciate MacArthur, but there's some places I disagree with MacArthur.
Oh man, I disagree with him a lot.
This is that decision-making will of God book that I was talking about. Well worn, but this is that book when I was in seminary that was transformative and helped me a whole lot. This is a great book. You guys are talking about heaven and stuff. Money, Possessions, and Eternity by Randy Alcorn. This is a thick tome. It's very, very small writing, but it is full of he's one of the most quotable writers. If you've never read a Randy Alcorn book, you should grab one. There's one on heaven. Okay, heaven is awesome. This one just does the nitty gritty on money, possession, and eternity, and it's super good. It's like you take something like what's Financial Peace seminar guy, Steve Ramsey. So what I like better about Alcorn is that he's just so heavenly minded about finances, and so he will step on your toes. Your toes will get stepped on.
Is he the story guy?
What out?
Is he the story guy?
Alcorn, he's written also stories. He has.
No, the story. The Bridge Bible story.
I don't know.
I'm not familiar.
I don't think so.
If it's Ellery, California. Although you right at Randy Alcorn, I can't think of her. Yeah, I'm not familiar with this time.
Okay, real quick, I get these quick. So Douglas Wilson, he's a polarizing figure. Very polarizing. I don't know. I'm just showing you. So I've seen him at a breadth of reading. So anyway, this is a book on classical education, and what he's done for the Christian classical education movement is phenomenal. Even when you just read about other things. But anyway, yes. Oh yeah. I mentioned that. I absolutely.
I'm just giving now.
Yeah. You're allowed to rip that song. You get in trouble. But, this is Matthew Truella, The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate. This was a book that was really influential when I was talking about Romans 13. You should read this. You should read this little book. It's not a hard read. People disagree with him, but it's called Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate. What he's arguing for is the way you go about. You don't overthrow the whole government. You work through other governmental magistrates, and you say, hey. You talk to the governor of Texas, you go, but the president's saying we shouldn't be doing that. Or you talk to a legislator in the local level, and you go, hey, what the state legislature's not doing, we shouldn't do that. Or, Montgomery County should handle things differently than Harris County, or that kind of stuff, right? So anyway, that's the kind of thing. And the last one, this is a big guy, but this is what I would consider you do. Okay, so it's called Kingdom Through Covenant. This is what I would say one of the best books I've ever read describing progressive covenantalism. So it's done by Peter Gentry and Steve Wallin. Gentry does the first half of the book, which is all just exegetical work, which is really good. He's going to show you that's where, if you want to say how do you do the math problem, I want to see 2 + 2 = 4. He's going to show all the work, right? But if you read I encourage people to read the second half, the Wellham stuff. He does all the theology part. And so if you want to, I think it's almost easier to read the second half first, understand the picture, and then read back and see how they're connecting the dots. But anyway, Wellham describes progressive covenantalism and just does a little bit of nuancing to show what's different about it from New Covenant theology. But they're very, very similar. But anyway, for somebody like me who found himself always between dispensationalism and covenantalism,
Yeah.
this book is so helpful. It is a deep dive. It's not an easy read, but I promise you, it's like worth it if you can kind of slug through it. So anyway,
I'm telling you.
Louis. Those video. You hear what to listen?
yeah, I've got Lloyd-Jones' book on preaching and preachers.
Right. Because
This
it's a bonus round though, that all his books.
so any of his commentaries
All
are fantastic. It's just really, really great.
had all of them.
The last thing I'll say is, because I just want to close with, I have my own paralysis. So I love listening to fantasy fiction. So like I recently got through all like the Dune series. I don't know if you've ever read any of those. I got Project Hail Mary on my list. I'm not gonna watch it until I've read it, but I'll do it first. I really love Agatha Christie mysteries. If you've never read an Agatha Christie mystery, you should listen. I think she's better than Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Sherlock Holmes. I think she's better than Sherlock Holmes, personally. I like Poirot, so get one that has Poirot in it, but it's really good. And then one of my favorite books of all times is The Count of Monte Cristo. If you've never read that book, it's a little bit thick. It's got some like French words. It's got a few parts where you have to kind of suffer through the very first part of it. But if you can get through the first couple chapters, I promise you, it's such a payoff. It is such a great story. It's like the ultimate guy gets back at people, like revenge kind of story, but like love story kind of tangled up in it. Anyway, really, really great. But anyway, that's other side read.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
I think I was 65.
Yeah. This is long. So we went about an hour last time.
By the way, just in my defense, I have this many books in my car that I decided not to bring in because I'm too embarrassed.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to say this too. This disclaimer. This is like over my life, right? I don't read all the time. Most of my reading is in the text of scripture that I'm working in a week. So like, I don't want to give this impression that I'm like a super reader. I'm not a super reader. I'm a slow reader. Yeah. I don't get through many things, but this is like over 25 years. You start to think about that. Like you just kind of chip away at a book.
Yep.
After 25 years, you got a few good books.
So there you go. There you go. Are you on books? What is it? The social books on the social media. What's it with Goodreads? Goodreads.
I'm not good at that. No.
Put all your
Yeah. What about library?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, like I said, we went about an hour last time. Do a little this time, so just a little 3 hours. Shoot TX time and 4.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you all.